Hello, everyone. I think I'm live. Hopefully you can see and hear me. I will check the stage here just to make sure you can see and hear me so I don't start talking when no one can see and hear me. So if you're here, just say hi. Hi, Justin. Hi, Regina. Oh, hey, Regina. So good to see her, at least her name. I can't see her face. All right, so that was a fantastic session going over some really big picture stuff. And now we're gonna go into the weeds. So that's what I really love about conferences like this is that we can both, zoom out and then go back into the details. So we can talk this thing and actually do the effing work. Also, if you have a problem with swearing, this might not be the session for you because I have a potty mouth. All right, so I'm going to share my slides here. And also, I should say, I'm going to do a quick Q&A at the end. I have a half an hour, so I'm going to cover as much as I can in that time, about 22 minutes of content. And then you're welcome to ask me questions. Just pop them in the Q&A or in the staged area. Cole will be collecting them. So with that, all right. So I can't see any chat things while this is happening. So just be aware of that. If you need me, Cole, just, I don't know, pop into the chat or pop into the video, I should say. All right, so we're gonna talk really specifically about community purpose statements, how to craft them and why you should even bother, because so many people talk about them as these big, lofty concepts. But when I look at them, when I build them with my clients, it is really specific. It is something that you use daily to make decisions in your community. So this is my favorite thing to work on with my clients, and it is the piece that cements everything else in your community. If you don't have a strategic purpose statement, you're going to get one today, and you'll be able to refine it from here. And it will be really hard to make any decisions. Your work might feel really random right now. Let me know if you've ever felt like your work is random, like you're not sure if you're doing a good job or not. You're not sure if you're successful. That's what a purpose statement is going to help you to establish for yourself, give you that peace of mind. So for those of you who don't know me, I knew some of you in the chat, but I didn't know everyone. So I am Carrie Melissa Jones. I am the author of the now award-winning book, Building Brand Communities, with my incredible co-author, Charles Vogel, who is the author of The Art of Community. I'm also a community builder. I've been building communities online for over 15 years. And presently, I'm an academic researcher of online communities at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I just got my thesis proposal accepted, so I'm really excited about that. That was this week. And so you know a little bit about me and my style. You've already heard that I cuss like a sailor. In addition, I'm fueled by dog pats. My little dog Bruce Wayne is here. He might bark at some point during the session. And Dolly Parton is my idol. I'm from my family's all from East Tennessee, so I love her so much. So my clients have included organizations from nonprofits to founders who are solo founders just starting something for the first time, who have this dream of a community that they haven't been able to realize yet. So I've worked with friends of mine. I've also worked with Google. I'm currently working with Equinix, the Elizabeth Warren presidential campaign. And what I know about this work, what I know is that all of the structures are the same. It's about how you put them to use. So here's what we're going to go over today. First, we're going to talk about why purpose matters. You probably hear this all the time, that purpose matters. If you've ever attended one of my workshops, you've heard it from me a lot of times. But it can become really cliched if we don't define what that means, unpack what that means. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about what most people get absolutely, totally wrong about purpose, and avoid those mistakes so that you can get really strategic in your work. And then we will create a crystal clear 3-part purpose statement so that you can have this lean and mean framework for writing a purpose statement, making it unique, practical for you. So this is really, it's strategic work that then is immediately applicable to your everyday work. So that's why I love this, because it's such low-hanging fruit for so many people. And even if you have a purpose statement right now, it might not be in this format. So you'll still get clarity, even if you have something right now. So sadly, I can't see you in the chat. Usually on Zoom, I can see you in the chat. But feel free to have a conversation amongst yourselves about what community purpose means to you in your work. What does it mean to have a purpose in your community? What I hear a lot from my clients is people will reference Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's your why, your reason for existing, your raison d'être, your unique value proposition. But it's still this fuzzy concept. So the definition I like to use, because we have to define our terms, as Lolita was saying about community in the last session, the definition I like is this intention. It's an intention to achieve a long-term goal that is both personally meaningful and makes a positive mark on the world. And this is from UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. One thing that they really emphasize about what purpose is that it's not a destination. You're not meant to achieve your purpose one day. It's not a goal in that sense. It's a journey and a practice. And so we have to put it into practice. We have to test it. Otherwise, you might have a purpose statement that says one thing and you might be doing something totally different and other people are saying nothing to you, but actually thinking that you're full of shit. Okay, so let's not have that happen for you. I see it all the time in my work. So a strategic purpose statement, this is how I define it. It is an intentionally crafted 3-part internal facing, not external facing sentence, which serves as a filter or a lens for every single decision that you as a community builder make. It's that simple. And yet many people don't do it this way. So first, let's look at a few obvious examples. What do purpose statements look like out in the wild, the ones that you actually see? And I will say that what you actually see of purpose statements on the outside of many communities is often not even congruent, not even in alignment with what's going on behind the scenes. So always take purpose statements with a grain of salt. So here are a few examples, though, just so that you know how it might look out in the world. This example here is from the Freelancing School. My slides might be quite small, so I'll read out the important parts for you. The Freelancing School's community is on Circle, and they say that the Freelancing School community is a place for freelancers to connect, share ideas, and help each other grow their freelance businesses. So connect, share ideas, and learn. Those are the important things, the important pieces of the purpose of the Freelancing School. But these can often be really cliched phrases. We have to be really careful when we say things like, we're going to connect here. Yeah, you get it. Then here's another example. This was actually a former client of mine who I think I got all of their identifying details out there. I was doing an audit of their programs and looking for a purpose statement, and I found it buried in the code of conduct, which was linked at the very top next to the sign-in of their community. And that is where I found the purpose statement. It was actually buried right in here. And it says, this community will allow you the opportunity to communicate with your peers, benefit from the experience of others, and participate in ongoing discussions. So that is a purpose statement. And that's something that's actionable. However, it is not very helpful to have it buried where it is in that particular instance. So you know what purpose is, but why does it matter? I know me saying that purpose matters to you, you're like, duh, of course purpose matters. But let's get really specific, because oftentimes when you're working with executives or working with your teammates, they might also be like, yeah, purpose matters, great, and roll their eyes and wonder why you spend time and also vet things through the purpose statement. So I'm going to share with you 3 reasons it does, and you can share these with your teams so that they can stop pushing back on you and creating tons and tons of resistance for you. And 1 reason why purpose does not matter. So number 1, this is probably the top reason, is that purpose is a key intrinsic motivator for human beings. So your members want to find purpose when they show up at your community. They don't just want to be, joining another forum or part of another Zoom event. They want a real purpose. When we have a real purpose, the medium almost becomes secondary to everything else. The purpose the medium. So this is really, really crucial that we have a purpose so that we know that we're motivating people to show up of their own volition. 2, purpose is a uniting force for your internal team. And that is why it is so bad when people don't agree what their purpose statements are. When no one in an organization is on the same page about one, what community is. I see that constantly. And two, what the purpose of their community is. Because what's missing there is that there's no clarity on what is allowed, what's good, what's successful in the community. And so once you have a purpose statement that has gotten buy-in and alignment from your entire team, it can then become this uniting force. And I've seen this from really small organizations with 1 or 2 employees to gigantic thousands and thousands of employee companies. When they have this statement, they can align multiple departments. Everything else becomes clear. Again, this is the linchpin of everything else. Also, purpose, when used correctly, is a crucial and clarifying decision-making tool. So it is a lens for you to make all of your community decisions with. I can't tell you how many times clients come to me asking me, should I do this? What about this idea? What about that idea? And my answer to them is always, let's go back to the purpose. Let's go back, let's see what it says. Let's see how it might guide us here. And when we do that, the person that I work with is then developing their own intuition, their own internal compass for how to build community. They're not just relying on me. And that way they're actually building this muscle, really, of making sure that everything is aligning with their purpose statement. Here's when it does not matter. When purpose is completely frivolous, and this is what we often see out in the world, is that purpose is used as a bunch of fluffy, meaningless words thrown on a homepage, thrown on a landing page. And here's one example that drives me crazy because this is a community that I'm part of. It's a professional association I'm part of. And unfortunately, this is what most people think purpose is, are these kinds of like big statements here. So our purpose is connecting you with peers to share strategic advice, solve challenges, and develop new approaches. We're here to explore, connect, engage. I don't even know what to do with that statement. Like, I'm not looking to necessarily engage with people, just to engage with people. If you've worked with me before, you know that meaningful engagement is really important to all the work that I do. So this is what people often think of as purpose statements. It's something that they can put into these 3 little modular graphics into their user interface, and they can put this on top of their hero image. That is not, it's not that it's not important to have these design elements. That's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about something that is a decision filter for you in your work. So what most people get totally wrong, and you've seen this illustrated a little bit in that prior example, is that their purpose statements are written for vague, broad audiences. So people will often ask, can't we be for a really broad audience? Can't we be for everyone? No. If you don't know who it is that you're serving, or you're serving multiple audiences who have very different needs, then one purpose statement isn't going to do it for you. You're going to have to get more specific in the ways that you serve different personas in your community. 2 is that the words that you read in these purpose statements, some of the ones I've shared with you today, when you read them, they make you feel absolutely nothing. You're just like, okay, great. I'm going to move on. I'm going to skim that and I'm going to move on. And that's why words like inspire, engage, open-minded, fun, they're just so blech. It's just, ugh. like you just they don't make you feel a damn thing. And so we need to think about what words excite you, what words actually drive you to action, because if they don't excite you, they're not going to excite anyone else in the community. People also think that the purpose statement has to be perfectly written. But when I write purpose statements, no one ever has to see them except for the community manager and the internal teams. And it's something that should change. So there's a saying in startups and entrepreneurialism that if you launch something and you're not embarrassed of it, you've waited too long to launch. That can also be the case with a purpose statement. So it doesn't have to be perfect right out the gate. It just has to be clear. And then finally, people don't know when to put the purpose statement to work. It just sits there and it gathers dust, if they printed it out maybe, or digital dust in some folder somewhere deep in their archives, or it takes the shape of some BS on a code of conduct somewhere that no one ever reads. So instead of just letting it sit there, we have to put it to work. So here's just 3 examples. Every time you're vetting ideas for your community. So should we run this new program? How should we run this new program? Is this program worth doing? Does it meet our purpose statement? Yes. Okay, let's do it. Does it meet our purpose statement? No. Okay, let's move on. And then also for you, for setting boundaries for yourself. A lot of community managers don't know what success looks like, or there's this constant moving target of what success looks like. And oftentimes, it's not your fault, it's organizational culture's fault. But you still need to be able to set those boundaries for yourself. So if you have a really clear purpose statement and you know that you're moving the needle on that purpose statement, then you can set boundaries for what you say yes to and what you say no to. And finally, and in alignment with this, is that the purpose statement helps you create KPIs. When I sit down to write KPIs for my clients, I look at the purpose statement. If these KPIs are not matching up to the purpose statement, then we're optimizing for something that's not our purpose. So that's bad. So this really just, it's like I said, it's this compass that you can constantly refer to in your work. So now what we're going to do is actually go through and create your purpose statement. I'm going to walk you through the statement template that I use. And so you can have your own at the very end of this. So there's 3 parts to it, as I've mentioned before. Here, this is basically the how. How do you do this? So number 1, we've got the I gather, or we gather if you're a team. Who is it that you gather? You need to articulate a strong shared identity that your members share. The second thing is the to, or the what. What do we do together? So these are 3 verb statements that make it really clear the ways that members are going to make progress in your community. And finally, your so that. So is it big enough to matter? Why should someone show up for this? Going back to the very definition of purpose, how is this making a dent in the world and in that person's individual life? So you need to be able to answer these 3 questions. So let me give you some more context for what each of these really means. So your I gather. What we need to first understand is that the shared identities that people have is they have to be strong, and potentially even things that people feel like they can't find other people who share that identity. They're alienated around it or isolated around it in some way, or they're seeking a space where they can be safe and live into that identity more. So some examples are, not just business coaches, but business coaches who work only with elite, like 1 million annual recurring revenue clients, or women who have vision for their and others' futures. So something that is really specific. You don't just gather women. You don't just gather business coaches. There's something more about them that first attracts you to them and their work, and also will attract them to your community. So who you gather, how you write this, it has to be specific. People don't consider themselves generic or one-dimensional, so you shouldn't consider them that either. Also, resonant. So you have to choose words and descriptors that resonate with the people that you hope to bring together. So the description, if you were to share with them, wouldn't be odd or potentially embarrassing for them. And so related to that, you can also ensure that your description is vetted by the people in your community, vetted by your team, vetted by outsiders, and ask people if they see themselves in the way that you've described them. Or ask them, as a favor to do, ask them when you say the phrase. That is actually a much more illuminating question than just, do you see yourself as blah, blah, blah? I've asked this before, do you see yourself as a knowledge worker was one question I asked years ago. And people were like, I haven't heard that term since 1985. So no, I don't. So we had to go back to the drawing board. That was not the word used to describe these folks. So make sure that the words, the description that you create is specific, resonant, and vetted. Next, your to, this is the actual, what are we going to do together? This should feel tangible and real and something you can really act on in your everyday work. So just like in your description of your people that you gather, it has to be specific. The words need to help you make decisions, not just sound good. Have to be clearly defined. So if one of your statements is engage with each other or communicate with people or we gather together, like that is not going to be clearly defined enough. You need to pick words that are have clearer definitions. And I'm going to share an example with you at the end of this so that you'll actually see this in action. In addition, you need to make sure that the purpose statement verbs are unique to your niche. So if other people are doing the things that you plan to do, maybe, communicating or connecting with the same group of people that you are communicating with and connecting, how is your community going to stand out? How is it going to be unique? And why would someone show up to your community versus the other person's community? So really thinking about that and making it really clear, not just for them, but also for you, and you understand what your kind of your selling point really is in your community. The final piece of the purpose statement is then your so that. So why are we here? Is it big enough to matter to your individual members as well as to the world at large? So we need to make sure that our so that statement is relevant at all times. So right when the pandemic was declared last March, my clients were all going back and revising this. And one way I think that's really helpful to revise this or to make sure that you're really clear is to think about one member that you think of as your ideal member, right? It's the person that shows up to things, that is committed, that is always kind to other people. And think about, if you were to say, this is our so that, this is our why, would that person give a shit? Because if they wouldn't, then there you go. That's your answer. It's not moving. It will make them feel nothing. So you've got to keep revising. So just to go even deeper into this, it has to be moving. So again, do you feel anything in your body? You should literally feel it in your gut if it's really, really exciting to you. Feel anything when you say your so that statement. Is it something challenging? So it shouldn't be just something obvious and simple to do alone, like take a new course. That's what community is for getting through the challenges that are really, really hard to get through alone. So how is your so that going to help people make progress beyond what they could do alone? That's where you're really going to stand out. And then the third, just lofty enough. Your statement needs to be just lofty enough. I have had so many clients. This is less a problem with startups and more a problem with established organizations. But I've had clients who really don't like the question, if we succeed, how might the world look different? That makes them really uncomfortable because they don't think of themselves as changing the world with their work. Now, I will say some startups take that to a ridiculous and comical place. So this is about balancing and finding, you're not going to single-handedly change the world with this community. Maybe there are some communities where I would argue you are, but no one wants to do something where they're not going to make any difference. Okay, so find that balance for yourself. This is a little bit, it's not something I can necessarily pinpoint, like here's the exact way to do this. But again, you'll feel it in your body when you get it right, and it will feel right to your team as well. So here is an example of a before statement. This is something that I see my clients send me all the time in my onboarding that I do. I ask them what their purpose statements are in their communities. And this was from one of my recent clients. She said, to surround yourself with people who bring out your best. I'm like, darling, like this is a great start. We need to get a lot more specific here. That's not going to help you do shit. This is actually just going to help you get really confused and not get clarity in what you're doing every day. So we broke it down into these 3 statements. Number 1, we talked about who it was that she gathered. So she wasn't just gathering people as she had defined it before. She was gathering experienced, discerning problem solvers, not just people, period. And then the statements of what she was going to actually do with them was 1, to help hold each other accountable, 2, to mentor one another, and 3, to get pumped. So her community was about moving and getting outside and building your energy. And so these were the really important kinds of verb statements for her. And then the so that was so that group of people has an outlet to create personal and professional impact. So I can't tell you that this statement is perfect. I can't tell you it's going to be this in a year. What I can tell you is that having this clarity helped her write taglines, go to her designer and ask for, what the website should look like, helped her design the website and the community experience. And so it got her going, it got her started, and we might need to come back and refine it in a way that this statement, this lovely little statement, would never help her do, okay? And just so you're aware of how I kind of think about this for myself, my personal purpose statement in the community that I run a community of community builders. It's always kind of what I've done, is my statement is that I gather curious, determined, ethical community builders. That is the who that I gather. And then together they learn frameworks, they get accountability, and they have a safe space to bring their community building challenges. And then this so that is so that they build a community they're proud of now, not later, now. We don't have any more time to waste, okay? The world desperately needs our work. So that is my statement. And even as I said that, I kind of was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to do this work. And I really am. That's why I'm here today. So as you go through your own purpose statement, think about these elements for yourself. This will be recorded so you can come back to it. And this is something I teach about quite a bit. Really fill these in for yourself, run them by people. And the other thing is, guess what? No one ever needs to see this statement except for you if you don't want them to. It can just be for you in your own reference, although I highly, highly recommend that you share it with anyone you work with. But instead, a purpose statement is more likely to manifest through things like this. This is another circle community. This is the welcome message, right? So the purpose statement will echo through the welcome message. So Megan here says that this space is designed to help you dive deeper into seasonal living through pursuing gardening, intentional movements in life, eating through the seasons, and eventually being brought back to nature through it all. So that might not be her strategic purpose statement, but it is certainly, it could be turned into that so that her decisions are really clear what we do here and what we don't do here. It also helps you make programming decisions. So what you're looking at right now is a decision matrix. I love decision matrices. And every time I work on these with clients, I don't just look at things like RICE scores. I look at the impact on the purpose. So any idea we have, it has to have a high impact on purpose. Otherwise, we shouldn't even be thinking about doing it. And then also to answer questions, just your random questions like, should I pay speakers at my event? I literally had a client ask me that last week. Should I pay workshop leaders in my community? And what I might say is if your values are, getting a lot for nothing, you might not pay them. But if your values are expert knowledge, then yes, you should probably pay your speakers for your events. So it's going to help you answer all of these questions. So write it in the chat. I can't see it, but I'll see it in just a little bit. What is your strategic purpose statement based on the structures and the framework that we've talked about today? And you can keep working on that. I'm going to just kind of wrap things up here just so we can tie a pretty bow on everything. So to remind you, we've talked about why purpose matters. We've talked about what most people get absolutely, totally fucking wrong about purpose statements. And we've talked about the 3-part purpose statement template that you can use in your own work. And I just want to remind you as I leave you here that it is not enough to be industrious. So are the ants. What are you industrious about? This is from Henry David Thoreau. No hate on ants. Ants are impressive and fascinating. But it's really, this is what separates our work from just getting things done, being productive. This is what separates us into creating meaningful changes in the world. So with that, I thank you all for being here. I thank you all for your work. It is so important in this world. It is so, so needed. And all of my respect goes to you. And I would love to stay in touch with any and all community builders here today. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn. So I will stop sharing my screen here in just a second, and then I will go in and answer all of your questions. So let's see. I will stop sharing here. Q&A. All right. So let's see. Simon asks, do you ever work with a company and tell them a community isn't right for them? Yes, I have done that before. Sometimes what I'll do is actually transition them to here's what you should be doing instead. Other times I say I'm not the expert in that, but here's someone who is. There are certainly companies that either shouldn't be building community because they don't have the right leaders and the right incentives and the right structures, or that are just not ready yet. Like they're going to just be building something just to build it and it won't make a ton of sense. So I often recommend if people are in that stage that they build relationships first, because that's always the first step is building one-to-one relationships. But yeah, I absolutely tell people don't do this. Nikki asks, how often do you revisit your purpose statement? So I generally do it when I find it's not helpful anymore. So sometimes you don't need to revisit it. That one I shared with you, the one that I use for my community, I've had it in place since October of last year. I just revisited it actually a few weeks ago and I kind of refined some words on it just because I found that the previous one wasn't specific enough. But yeah, that's up to you. Again, it has to be a decision-making tool. And when it stops being helpful for you in that regard, you need to revisit it. Nisha asks, how is a purpose statement different than a mission or a vision statement? We use vision and mission at my company by default. Yeah, so they are different, especially the way I've just defined it today. I hope that's now clear to you. Vision and mission are often at the company level, although you can have a community vision and a community mission statement as well. But your community vision and your company vision and mission should not be like diametrically opposed to one another. They should be in alignment. They should come together. They should make sense. And I have seen some company mission and vision statements that make sense for the community as well. So sometimes it's, you know, two birds, one stone, which is great. Well, that's a violent metaphor and I don't like it. All right, let's see. Let's see. Tuvi says, not a question, Carrie, but you're, oh, make the session shine. Thank you. Thank you, Tuvi. That means the world to me. And let's see, will we be able to access this deck after this, pretty please? The deck, no, but the presentation, yes, you will have access to the presentation. So I believe I'm out of time and I need to wrap up now. If that's correct, Cole, just let me know. I'm going to stick around and just see what is going on in the chat. And I just saw Brian said feed two birds with one stone. I love that. So I'll stick around, answer questions. And like I said, reach out to me at Carrie Melissa Jones on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to find me these days. And I thank you all for your work and for your presence today. Bye, everyone.